sort of recommend some games that would be good for new players, sort of a buyer's guide for people newer to the board game hobby. And I thought, who better to speak to than Andy from Games Portal in Ringwood, Melbourne. Andy, thanks for welcoming us into the store.
No probs. Thanks for coming.
And I guess it is a thing of, there is, it's not a new thing to say. There has been, the last 10, 20 years, a bit of a board game resurgence. There's a lot more than Monopoly and Cluedo. As much as I have fond memories of Cluedo, there is sort of a wider world out here.
Yeah, it's come a long way since those games. I too even have fond memories of Monopoly, strangely, but it's definitely come a long way since then. Games have got a lot more to offer than they used to.
So we do have some recommendations for people who are new to the hobby. First, we've got Splendor, which is sort of a pretty popular, welcoming game. Set collection. You're trying to collect jewels in order to get points at the end, and then it has some cool pieces in the game as well.
Yeah, it's kind of got a nice tactile feel to it with poker chip style pieces that you can kind of stack up in your hand as the game goes on, and collect a certain number of these chips, and you can buy cards to make future chips cheaper. It's a nice, easy starting spot of a game that still has a bit of depth to it for a bit of replayability after you played a few times. You've still got a bit to offer.
Yeah, it also introduces sort of tableau building and set collection, so sort of themes and mechanics used in games quite a lot. So a good building block, but you can also then just bring it out with people and enjoy it. There is another version of the game they've released.
Yeah, Splendor Duel is a good two-player version of the game. As much as original Splendor is still playable for two players, it's best at 3 or 4 players, but the dual version sort of adds a bit of complexity to it and means that for 2 players, if you really enjoy the base Splendor game, the two-player version, I think, offers a lot more sort of nuanced gaming for it, and it's quite a good two-player game. I think it's got a lot to offer. But it is a bit more complex, so not necessarily as much of a starter game, but a very good two-player game.
And yeah, the benefit, I guess, of the original Splendor is you can play it as 2. You've got some friends over. You can, that they can play the game as well. Speaking of games that are like really good at 2 but can expand out, we do have an Australian game, Land vs Sea.
Yeah, Land vs Sea is a good area placement sort of building game where it's quite easy to pick up and it looks very nice. You've got to build lands and build sea channels depending on which player you are. So it's got a little bit of an asymmetrical touch to it, which is something slightly different from games, but it's very easy to tell what you're meant to do straight away because you've got to build a chunk of land or a chunk of sea depending on which player you are, which makes it pretty easy to pick up.
It's also one of those games where you can be friendly and make a nice map, or you can be kind of mean and cutthroat. And it also has rule sets where you can do the base game, which is simplified, or you can there's adding story conditions where it gets this placement becomes a lot more important and tactical. So I like that you can change the depth and then add some extra players as well.
Yeah, it does sort of level up as your first play experience is very, very straightforward, and means that if you're playing with somebody who's played it before, you can start to add more of the game components, but once again, it's still easy to then bring a new player in and say, we'll go back to the starting level and make it easy for everyone.
Speaking of maps and sort of tactical decisions, or a little bit like tactical decisions, we've got one of my favourites, Flick of Faith, which is a dexterity area control game where you're flicking around pieces on a mat.
Yeah, once again, it's a game that does feel really nice in the hand. You've got a nice neoprene mat that similar to these sort of ones here, and it's got nice pieces that you kind of a bit weighty that feel behind your finger as you flick them across the board, but it's not all about force, which people very quickly find out as they often flick a bit too far and miss their goals sort of thing, but it's quick and easy to pick up.
There's also different gods powers, which sort of change the game a little bit and give it a bit of replayability. It's also doing area control or beginner area control, as well as some dexterity elements. So sort of different mechanics. Again, you can build off if you like that sort of style of game. It's a bit of a jump from Flick of Faith to Blood Rage, but the steps are there. Speaking of inviting more players around, we do have the final recommendation is King of Tokyo by the good Dr. Richard Garfield, creator of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, this one's a nice sort of easy to pick up game that I know a lot of people who have played it with their kids sort of thing and can rope them in early because it's got a very simple sort of mechanic of just rolling dice and making sets out of them. It's somewhat reminiscent of Yahtzee, except that it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and it's got a little bit more going on than just collecting a set of numbers, in that you have monsters and you're vying for the control over Tokyo. So it's got a lot more flavour to it, but it's good, simple roll dice, make sets out of the dice.
And I think what works with this game is it goes up to 6, and you comfortably play 4, 5, 6 very well. And a lot of games really, after 3 or 4, maybe you're looking for something else. So having a game where you can bust out if you've got some friends over or family over is something that's really good. So those are 4 games that we recommend that you can enjoy when you're starting, but you'll still be able to crack them out even if you get into the hobby a little bit further.
Yeah, they're good games that, very good for a beginner, but once again, for the more seasoned player, these are ones that we're often happy to start a gaming night off just kind of warming up with some quick game of Tokyo or a quick game of Flick of Faith, just to sort of get us in the mood without having to think too much.
The other reason we wanted to talk about sort of people who are new to the hobby is, once people get in the hobby, they've got some favourites, they've tried different styles of games, they sort of narrow their focus, so it's a bit harder to do broader recommendations. That's where you want to pop into a store like Games Portal and ask the friendly staff for some recommendations. So, Andy, thanks for letting us come down and talk about some new games for people.
No problems, my pleasure.